The prisoner and the human, the cold metal floor of the prison cell burned against Lyra's skin. Her arms were tied behind her back, the alien cuffs biting into her wrists. Every sound inside the human warship felt louder than it should be. The hum of the engines, the distant echo of boots, the sharp hiss of opening doors. Her heart raced with fear. Humans. Her people had told stories about them since childhood. Never let a human catch you. Her brother used to warn her. They don't show mercy. They don't keep prisoners. If they find you, they kill you. Now, Lyra was caught. She sat alone in the dimly lit cell, shivering, her breathing shallow. The battle was over. Her ship was destroyed. Most of her crew was dead. She was the last survivor. Any moment now they would come for her. Any moment now, she would die. Suddenly, the heavy door slid open with a hiss. A tall human stepped inside. He wore a black combat suit, the insignia of the Terran fleet, on his chest. His presence filled the room with quiet authority. His short, dark hair was damp with sweat and his face was calm. Too calm. Lyra's first instinct was to curl away, but her body was trapped. The human looked at her in silence for a long moment, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for something. Finally he spoke, his voice low and steady. Name? Lyra pressed her lips together and stared back at him with defiance. She would not give them anything. The man sighed softly, then stepped closer. The soft hum of his boots against the floor made her heart pound harder. You know, he said, quietly, if I wanted you dead, you wouldn't still be breathing. Lyra's chest tightened. That was exactly what she feared, that he would kill her quickly and without warning. Instead, he crouched in front of her. I'm Captain Arik, he said. I'm not here to hurt you. His words made no sense. Humans didn't spare prisoners. Her people believed humans had no compassion, no empathy. And yet, there he was, speaking softly, almost gently. Lyra tried to stay silent, but her voice betrayed her in a whisper. Why am I alive? Arik tilted, his head watching her carefully. Because I chose to keep you alive. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the deep hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Arik stood and walked to a small panel near the wall. A hidden drawer opened, and he pulled out a small container. He placed it on the floor between them. Food. Lyra stared at it, confused. He noticed her hesitation and said, You haven't eaten in 2 days. Eat. You'll need your strength. Her stomach ached with hunger, but her pride was stronger. She didn't move. Arik sighed again, crouching closer so their faces were almost level. I'm not your enemy, Lyra. She froze. How? Do you know my name? She whispered. He gave her a small, almost amused smile. I read your ship's logs, and your language. Took me a while, but I like puzzles. Lyra blinked in shock. No human she had ever met could speak her language. Yet he had learned it, just to talk to her. Why? Before she could ask, the lights flickered overhead. A distant alarm blared somewhere deep inside the ship. Arik glanced toward the door, his jaw tightening. They'll be here soon, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Who? She asked softly. He looked at her again, his eyes darker now. People who won't spare you like I did. Lyra's throat went dry. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. Listen carefully, Lyra. There's something you need to know. This war, it isn't what you think it is. She frowned, unsure if this was some kind of trick. What are you talking about? Arik didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small hologram device. He pressed a button, and a blue projection lit up between them, a map of the stars. Lyra's eyes widened. The hologram showed 3 fleets, hers, the humans, and a third force she didn't recognize, hidden beyond the outer colonies. They're playing us, Arik said grimly. Both our people. Someone else started this war. Lyra shook her head slowly. It didn't make sense. No, she whispered. That can't be true. My people said, I know what they said. Arik interrupted softly. Just like mine. But I've seen the evidence. I've lost good soldiers to this lie. She stared at the hologram, her pulse thundering in her ears. If what he said was true, everything she believed, everything she fought for, was wrong. Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed outside the corridor. Shadows moved under the door. Arik shut off the hologram and leaned in close. They're coming. If they find you, you're dead. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. You're going to kill me? She whispered. Arik's eyes softened, and for the first time she saw something unexpected in them. Not cruelty, not anger, compassion. He leaned close enough for her to feel his breath and whispered, I'm going to get you out of here. Before she could react, the door panel beeped and heavy boots stopped right outside. Arik placed a finger to his lips. Trust me, he mouthed. The door began to open. The door slid open. 3 human soldiers stepped inside, their boots striking the metal floor like thunder. Their rifles glimmered under the cold light, aimed directly at Lyra. Captain Arik stood between them and the prisoner. She's coming with me, Arik said firmly. The lead soldier frowned. Orders are to execute alien captives, sir. Arik's jaw tightened. New orders. From command. The soldier hesitated but lowered his weapon. The others followed, though their eyes burned with distrust. Lyra's pulse hammered in her ears. She didn't understand why Arik was protecting her, but she could see it in his face, and he was defying his own people. This wasn't mercy. This was risk. When the soldiers were gone, Arik turned back to her. Get up, he whispered. Lyra hesitated. Her body was weak, her knees trembling, but there was something in his voice. A quiet, commanding force. She obeyed. Arik led her through a narrow maintenance corridor behind the cells. The walls were dark and lined with humming pipes. Every sound echoed, distant alarms, heavy footsteps, the low rumble of the ship. Where are we going? Lyra asked cautiously. Somewhere. Safe, Arik replied. Safe. The word sounded like a lie. They stopped near a locked panel. Arik placed his hand on a scanner, and the wall hissed open, revealing a small hidden room filled with holographic maps and encrypted terminals. Lyra stepped inside slowly, her senses on edge. This is off limits to most crew, Arik explained. No one will find us here. Lyra crossed her arms, her voice low and sharp. Why are you helping me? You should hate me. You should kill me. Arik met her gaze, his expression unreadable. If I hated you, you'd already be dead. Her throat tightened. She didn't have an answer. Arik activated a hologram. Star systems lit up around them like fireflies in the dark. You think your people started this war, he said quietly. My people think the same about yours, but both are wrong. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Then who? Arik zoomed into a distant sector of space, a place she had never seen before. A red marker blinked slowly. Someone else, he said, his voice low and grim. An enemy neither of us were meant to see. The hologram shifted, showing distorted images, black ships with jagged edges, energy signatures unlike any known, technology and strange coded transmissions. Lyra stepped closer, her heart pounding. This can't be real. It's real, Arik said. And they're using us. They feed us lies, pit us against each other, and wait for us to destroy ourselves. When we're weak, they'll strike. She stared at him, silent for a long moment. Finally, she whispered, Why are you showing me this? Because I can't. Stop them alone, Arik replied. I need you. Lyra froze. This was insane. Helping a human was treason. If her people ever found out, she would be executed without trial. But deep inside, something gnawed at her. Doubt. If what he said was true, then everything she believed was a lie. Before she could respond, a sharp alarm blared through the walls. Red lights flooded the room. Arik's expression hardened. They know you're missing, he said. The ship trembled violently, and the sound of rushing boots echoed from the corridors above. Stay behind me, Arik ordered, drawing his sidearm. Lyra hesitated, panic rising in her chest. What happens if they catch us? Arik looked at her over his shoulder. His voice was calm, but his words were cold. They won't catch us. They sprinted through narrow corridors, ducking under pipes and sliding behind bulkheads as security. Teams stormed past. The alarms were deafening now, red lights flashing across every wall. Everywhere they turned, soldiers were searching. Arik seemed to know the ship better than anyone, taking paths Lyra didn't even notice existed. Finally, they stopped at a sealed hatch marked with a warning sign. Arik entered a code, and the hatch slid open, revealing a dark chamber filled with escape pods. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. You're helping me escape? Arik glanced at her, his jaw set. Helping us escape, he corrected. Before she could question him, a deep metallic roar thundered through the ship. Lyra's stomach dropped as the holographic displays above the pods came online. Incoming fleet detected. Unknown signatures. Hostile intent confirmed. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. It's them, Arik said, his voice grim. The ones behind the war. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber, throwing them both to the ground. Sparks rained from the ceiling, filling the air with smoke and static. Lyra pushed herself up, coughing, as Arik grabbed her wrist and dragged her toward the nearest pod. Go, he shouted. Before they could climb in, the chamber door burst open. 3 armored soldiers stormed inside, rifles raised. Step away from the alien, one barked. Arik raised his weapon, his voice sharp as steel. Stand down. That's an order. The soldiers hesitated. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of them lowered his rifle, but the other 2 didn't. The sound of gunfire erupted, deafening and chaotic. Energy bolts scorched the walls, lighting up the room in flashes of white and blue. Arik dove behind a console, returning fire with deadly precision. One soldier fell, then another, but the third lunged forward, tackling Arik to the ground. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to run, but something inside her shifted. She grabbed a fallen weapon and fired. The last soldier dropped motionless. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by Lyra's shaky breaths. Arik pulled himself to his feet, blood running down his arm, and looked at her. You just saved my life, he said softly. Lyra stared at the weapon in her hand, trembling. No, she whispered. You saved mine first. Arik stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. This changes everything, Lyra. We're in this together now. Before she could reply, the ship shuddered violently again. Through the viewport, they saw it. Dozens of black, jagged ships descending. From the void, the real enemy had arrived. Arik turned to her, his voice steady despite the chaos. Get in the pod, now. Lyra hesitated for a heartbeat, then followed him inside. The hatch sealed. The countdown began, and then the pod launched into the darkness. The escape plan. The escape pod tore away from the Terran warship, spinning violently through the void. Lyra gripped the seat handles so tightly her claws dug into the metal. The ship shuddered around them, alarms screaming as Captain Arik struggled to stabilize the controls. Hold on, he shouted over the roar. Through the viewport, Lyra watched, in terror as dozens of black, jagged ships descended like predators from the darkness. They moved unlike anything she had ever seen, silent, fast, and unnaturally smooth, as though space itself bent around them. They're here, she whispered. Arik's jaw tightened. Yeah, and they're hunting us. Suddenly, a blinding flash exploded outside, and the Terran warship they had just escaped from erupted into flames. Lyra gasped, her heart pounding. Your ship. They're not after the ship, Arik said grimly. They're after us. Before she could ask, why? A dark shadow streaked past their pod. A black alien fighter locked onto their position, weapons charging. Arik, I see it, he barked, slamming his palm onto the controls. The pod's thrusters roared, spinning the craft into a sharp dive as an energy blast tore past them, narrowly missing the hull. They're too fast, Lyra whispered, panic in her voice. Arik's fingers danced across the console. Then we'll just have to be smarter. He punched a sequence into the nav computer, and suddenly the pod lurched violently. Lyra was slammed against her seat as gravity shifted and the stars outside blurred into streaks of white. "What did you do?" she shouted. Arik's lips curved into a tight, dangerous smile. "Jump drive, short-range warp." Lyra stared at him in shock. "In a pod this small? That's suicide." "Better than being vaporized," Arik said calmly. The pod screamed as the warp engine strained against its limits. Lights flickered, and sparks rained from the ceiling. Then, just as suddenly, the shaking stopped. Silence. They had jumped. For the first time in minutes, Lyra let herself breathe. But relief didn't last. The nav screen beeped sharply, flashing red. Warning. Multiple unknown signatures detected. Lyra's claws dug deeper into the armrest. "They followed us," Arik cursed under his breath. "Damn it, they can trace warp jumps." The display lit up with 6 enemy fighters emerging from a shimmering distortion behind them, sleek and deadly like predators on the hunt. "They're not letting us go," Lyra whispered. "Good," Arik said coldly, pulling a lever. "Because I'm not done yet." Before Lyra could ask what he meant, the pod's panels shifted, revealing hidden compartments. 2 automated railguns extended from beneath the hull, humming with power. Lyra blinked in shock. "This is not a normal escape pod." Arik's eyes burned with intensity. "I don't believe in normal." The black fighters closed in, energy, weapons glowing. Arik twisted the controls, spinning the pod between floating asteroid debris. The first volley of enemy fire tore past, lighting up the darkness with streaks of blue plasma. The railguns roared to life, shredding one fighter into fragments. Lyra gasped, watching the wreckage spiral into space. "That's one," Arik muttered, eyes sharp and focused, but the remaining 5 ships adjusted instantly, moving in eerie synchronization. "These things, they're not piloted," Lyra realized. Arik nodded grimly. "Drones, and they learn fast." The pod dove into a dense asteroid field, jagged rocks tumbling in slow motion all around them. The enemy drones followed without hesitation, weaving effortlessly through the chaos. "Arik, they're closing in," Lyra cried. "Not yet," he said through clenched teeth. Almost there. A massive asteroid loomed ahead, spinning slowly in the void. At first, Lyra thought Arik was going to crash, until she saw the faint glow of a hidden structure built into the rock's surface. "What is that?" she breathed. Arik's lips curled into a half-smile. "Our only chance." They shot past the asteroid's outer edge and dove straight into a narrow tunnel carved into its surface. The drones followed. The tunnel twisted and turned, forcing the pod to bank hard, sparks flying as the hull scraped the rock walls. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a massive hollow chamber deep inside the asteroid. Floating silently in the center was an ancient alien station, covered in strange markings, its surface cracked and glowing faintly with dormant energy. Lyra stared in awe. "This place, it's thousands of years old." "No time for history," Arik snapped. "Hold on." The pod shot past the station just as the drones entered the chamber. Arik slammed a button on the console, a hidden beacon within the asteroid, activated, pulsing with light. Almost instantly, the station came to life. Rings of energy rotated around its core, emitting a low, resonant hum. Lyra's jaw dropped as streams of golden light lashed out like whips, striking the first 2 drones and disintegrating them instantly. What just happened?" she gasped. Arik allowed himself a small, satisfied grin. "I had a hunch this station wasn't as dead as it looked." But the victory was short-lived. The remaining 3 drones adapted instantly, weaving around the energy streams and locking onto their pod. "Arik, we can't fight them," Lyra shouted. "We don't have to," he said calmly, typing a rapid sequence into the terminal. "What are you doing?" "Borrowing their own signal." The pod systems screeched as Arik hijacked the drone's encrypted frequency. Within seconds, 2 of the drones froze mid-flight, their system shutting down. But the last drone didn't stop. It accelerated, straight toward them. "Brace!" Arik yelled, slamming the thrusters to full power. The drone fired a concentrated energy beam. It grazed the pod's hull, melting a section of armor and sending alarms blaring. Arik swerved hard, dodging another shot by inches. Lyra grabbed the weapon control panel and fired both railguns at once. The rounds ripped through the drone's core, and it exploded into shards of molten metal. Silence returned. For the first time since they launched, the void was still. Arik leaned back in his seat, breathing hard. We're clear. For now. Lyra's eyes stayed on the alien station, its energy fading back into silence. What is this place? She whispered. Arik glanced at her, his expression grim. Not a station, he said softly. A warning. Lyra frowned. Warning? About what? Arik activated the holographic map again. Symbols from the station scrolled across the screen, translating slowly into their language. Lyra's breath caught when she read the first line. The architects are returning. The Forbidden Alliance. The escape pod drifted in silence, hidden inside the hollow asteroid. For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. Her golden eyes were fixed on the ancient alien station outside, its cracked surface still glowing faintly after awakening. Captain Arik stared at the decrypted message on the holoscreen. The architects are returning. He whispered the words like a curse. Lyra's claws tightened around the edge of her seat. Who are the architects? Arik didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tapped the console, cycling through fragmented data pulled from the station. Strange glyphs flashed, slowly translating into crude words. Whoever they are, Arik said finally, his voice low and sharp. They built this place, and they started everything. Lyra turned to him, confusion clouding her face. Started. What? He looked up, locking eyes with her. The war. Us, you, me, everything. Before Lyra could respond, a harsh beep cut through the silence. Incoming signal detected. Arik frowned and activated the comms. A distorted voice filled the pod, static tearing through every word. Captain Arik, stand down. You have something that belongs to us. Lyra's throat tightened. They found us. Arik narrowed his eyes. Not them. The voice cleared suddenly and Lyra froze. It wasn't human. It wasn't machine. It was her own language. Lyra, the voice said, softly, it's your brother. Her heart stopped. That was impossible. Her brother Kalen had died when their ship was destroyed. She had watched it happen. The explosion swallowing his fighter in a ball of fire. But now, his voice was here, alive. Lyra's claws trembled against her knees. Kalen? How? Arik cut her off sharply. Don't trust it, it's a trap. Lyra turned on him, anger flashing in her eyes. It's my brother. Arik leaned closer, his voice a low growl. No, it isn't. I've seen this trick before. They mimic voices they want you to follow. Before Lyra could argue, the station outside began to hum again. Rings of faint energy rippled across its surface, pulsing in response to the signal. Arik's jaw tightened. They're trying to activate it. Lyra's chest tightened. The architects? He nodded grimly. Whoever's controlling that signal has access to their tech. Suddenly, the asteroid around them shook violently, cracks splitting across the walls. The pod's systems blared warnings. Something's powering up, Arik shouted. Outside, one of the dormant gates around the station began spinning. Bright energy surged between its rings, forming a spiraling vortex. Lyra stared in horror. That's a wormhole. Arik's fingers flew across the console. And something's coming through. From the heart of the vortex, a monstrous shape emerged, a black skeletal ship unlike anything either of them had ever seen. Its surface twisted unnaturally like shadows frozen in metal. Lyra felt her blood turn cold. That's not possible. Arik gritted his teeth. Oh, it's possible, and it's about to get worse. The alien ship began deploying hundreds of small, insect-like drones that swarmed out into the chamber, their glowing red eyes locking onto the pod. Arik cursed. We're leaving. Now. He slammed the thrusters forward. The pod roared to life, shooting out of the hollow chamber and into open space. The swarm followed. Outside the asteroid, the void was chaos. Human and Lyrian fleets had both arrived, drawn by the same strange signal. Warships on opposite sides of the battlefield aimed, weapons at each other, until the alien swarm descended. And then, everything changed. Lyra watched in shock as both fleets were torn apart in seconds. The black drones sliced through shields like paper, cutting apart massive battleships as though they were nothing. Arik's knuckles turned white around the controls. This isn't a battle, he muttered. It's a slaughter. Suddenly, a message crackled through the pod's comms, a human general's voice, cold and sharp. Captain Arik, this is Fleet. Command, you're ordered to stand down and return the alien prisoner immediately. Lyra's stomach twisted. Arik's voice was like steel. With all due respect, Command can go to hell. We've got bigger problems. That's an order, Captain. Arik cut the channel without hesitation. Lyra stared at him. You just disobeyed your entire command structure. He shot her a grim smile. Wasn't the first time. Suddenly, Lyra's hollow wristband began to glow, a secure transmission from her own people. She hesitated before opening it, and a cold, familiar voice filled the pod. Lyra, this is High Counselor Vera. You are to kill the human and secure the station's data immediately. Do this, and your exile will be forgiven. Lyra's claws froze. They knew she was alive. They knew she was with Arik. And they wanted her to betray him. Arik's gaze was fixed on her, silent, waiting. For the first time since the war began, Lyra didn't know whose side she was on. Before she could respond, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield. The alien mothership unleashed a gravitational pulse, ripping apart entire ships, human and Lyrian alike, and dragging debris into its vortex. The pod spiraled violently, alarms blaring. Lyra grabbed the console, shouting, Arik, we're being pulled in. He gritted his teeth. Then we go through. Lyra's eyes widened. Through what? The wormhole. She stared at him like he was insane. That's suicide. Arik locked eyes with her, his voice low and steady. It's either that, or we die here. Before she could argue, he slammed the thrusters to maximum power. The pod roared forward, dodging chunks of debris and weaving between swarms of alien drones. Energy blasts scorched the hull, alarms screamed, and gravity pulled harder with every passing second. The swirling vortex of the wormhole filled the viewport, its blinding light twisting like liquid fire. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as they plunged straight into it. Inside the wormhole, there was no up, no down, no time. Lyra felt her body pulled apart and stitched back together in an endless stream of light. The pod shook violently, panels exploding around them. And then, silence. The pod drifted out into a calm, endless void. Stars stretched around them, but none were familiar. No known constellations, no mapped systems. They were somewhere else. Arik leaned back, breathing hard, his voice barely above a whisper. We're not in our galaxy anymore. Lyra stared out at the strange alien stars, her voice trembling. Arik, where have you brought us? The dead galaxy. The escape pod drifted, silently through an alien void. Lyra pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the viewport, her claws trembling. Outside, stars burned faintly, but their positions were all wrong. No mapped systems, no familiar constellations. This isn't our galaxy, she whispered. Captain Arik leaned against the console, breathing hard. Sweat ran down his face, but his eyes remained sharp. Wherever we are, he said quietly, someone wanted us here. Lyra turned to him, confusion and fear twisting inside her. The architects? Arik didn't answer. His silence was louder than words. The pod's AI flickered to life, its synthetic voice cold and mechanical. Warning. Life support reserves at 37%. Fuel depleted. Emergency landing required. Arik gritted his teeth. We'll have to find somewhere to land. Lyra glanced at the scanner. It showed only one habitable object within range, a small shattered planet floating near the edge of a dying star. It's barely stable, she warned. Arik set his jaw. Stable enough. As the pod descended, the planet's surface came into view. Cracked deserts, collapsed cities, and massive black towers stretching toward the dim red sky. When they landed, silence greeted them. No birds, no wind, no signs of life. Lyra stepped onto the dusty ground cautiously, her boots crunching over ancient bones. "This place is dead," she whispered. Arik crouched beside one of the black towers, running his gloved fingers over strange alien markings carved into the stone. The symbols glimmered faintly under his touch. "These aren't just ruins," he murmured. This was one of their strongholds. Lyra's claws curled tightly. The architects. Suddenly the ground beneath them vibrated, and the tower pulsed with light. Lyra staggered back. "What did you do?" "I didn't touch anything," Arik said sharply. Something activated on its own. Before either could react, a low hum filled the air. Massive alien drones emerged from hidden shafts beneath the surface, sleek, black, and insect-like, their glowing red eyes locking onto them. Lyra's breath caught. "Arik, we're not alone." Arik drew his rifle in one smooth motion. "Run!" They sprinted through the ruins as the drones gave chase, their movements disturbingly silent except for the faint buzz of their wings. Lyra ducked behind a collapsed archway, firing a stolen human pistol. Her shots barely scratched the drones. "Armor, they're too strong," she shouted. Arik slammed a grenade against the nearest drone, diving behind cover as it exploded in a burst of plasma. "That bought us seconds," he growled. "Not safety." They raced deeper into the city until they stumbled upon a massive underground chamber. Inside, thousands of alien stasis pods lined the walls, each one containing a strange, skeletal figure suspended in glowing fluid. Lyra froze, her voice barely a whisper. "Arik, are those alive?" Arik's expression hardened. "Not yet." Suddenly, one of the pods flickered, then another, and another. The figures inside began to move. A chilling voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language neither of them knew, yet somehow they understood every word. "You were never meant to find us." Lyra's claws dug into her palms. "Who are you?" she whispered. The voice reverberated through the air, deep and inhuman. "We are the architects. You are our mistake." Arik's hand tightened on his weapon. "What do you want?" "We created your kind, both of you. Humans. Lyrians. We designed your wars. We shaped your fear. You were never meant to survive." Lyra's heart pounded violently. You started the war." "The war is a tool," the voice said coldly. "Conflict makes you evolve faster. We needed strong species to rebuild our armies." Arik cursed under his breath. "So we've been pawns this whole time." "Pawns?" The voice rumbled like distant thunder. "No, weapons." Suddenly the stasis pods began to open. One by one, tall, skeletal beings stepped out, their pale armor fused with their bodies, their glowing eyes fixed on Arik and Lyra. Arik raised his rifle, but Lyra grabbed his arm. "Don't. You can't fight them." "We'll see about that," Arik snapped, firing a burst of plasma rounds into the nearest architect. The being caught the bolts mid-air and crushed them with its hand. Arik froze. "Well, that's new." Before the architects could advance, a deafening explosion shook the chamber. From above, a human gunship descended through the ruins, its cannons roaring as missiles ripped into the alien pods. A familiar voice shouted through the comms. "Arik, get on board now." Arik's eyes widened. "Commander Hale." He grabbed Lyra's wrist and ran, pulling her toward the dropship. They jumped aboard just as the gunship lifted off, leaving the ruins behind in flames. Inside the cabin, Arik turned to Hale, his former commander. "I thought you were dead." Hale smirked faintly. "Not yet, and you're welcome." Lyra stared at him warily. "Why are you here?" Hale's expression darkened. "Because Command knows what you've discovered, and they want it erased." Arik stiffened. "Erased? You mean us?" Hale didn't deny it. Before Arik could react, Hale drew his sidearm and aimed it at Lyra's head. "Hand over the station data, Arik, or she dies." Lyra froze, her claws trembling. Arik stepped between them, his voice low and sharp. "Hale, listen to me." "I am listening," Hale said coldly, "and what I hear is treason." Suddenly, the gunship jolted violently. The cockpit alarm screamed as something massive locked onto them from orbit. Through the viewport, Lyra saw it. A colossal architect mothership, larger than anything they had ever encountered, descending toward the planet. Arik lunged at Hale, knocking the weapon aside just as the ship was hit by a blast of alien energy. The gunship spiraled out of control, fire erupting from its engines. Arik grabbed Lyra, shouting over the chaos, "Hold on!" The world became a blur of light and sound as the dropship crashed into the ruins below. When Lyra opened her eyes, everything was smoke and fire. Hale was gone. Arik was bleeding but alive. And above them, the architect's mothership blotted out the dying sun. Lyra's voice trembled as she whispered, "Arik, what do we do now?" Arik stared up at the shadowy behemoth, his jaw tight, his voice low and cold. "We find a way to kill gods." The revelation smoke and dust hung heavy in the air. Lyra crawled out from under the shattered wreckage of the human gunship, coughing violently. The ruins of the dead city stretched out around her, glowing faintly under the red, dying sun. Arik lay nearby, blood trickling from his forehead but still breathing. She grabbed his arm and shook him. "Arik," he groaned, forcing his eyes open. "Still here. Not dead yet." Before Lyra could reply, a deep, resonant hum rolled through the ground beneath them. They both turned toward the horizon and froze. The architect mothership hovered above the ancient ruins, blotting out the dim light. Its surface pulsed with strange patterns of glowing energy, shifting like liquid metal. Massive tendrils of light extended from its hull, piercing deep into the planet below. Lyra's voice trembled. "It's feeding." Arik wiped the blood from his face, his jaw tight. "No, it's harvesting." The ground rumbled again and Lyra glanced around in confusion. "Harvesting what? There's nothing alive here." Arik looked at her grimly. "Not life, memory." Before Lyra could ask what he meant, a blinding flash erupted from the mothership. A massive beam of energy slammed into the ruins, shaking the entire world. Lyra stumbled, grabbing Arik's arm. "We need to move. Now," Arik nodded, pulling her toward the shadow of a collapsed tower. That's when a sudden metallic screech cut through the silence. 3 architect sentinels emerged from the rubble ahead, towering insect-like machines with blade-like limbs and glowing red optics. Lyra's claws dug into her palms. "They've found us!" Arik raised his weapon and fired. The plasma rounds hit one sentinel square in the chest and simply disappeared, absorbed into its shifting armor. Lyra's breath caught. "Arik, we can't kill them." Arik's jaw clenched. "Then we don't fight. We run." They sprinted through the ruins, the sentinels giving chase, leaping across broken rooftops with terrifying speed. Energy blasts scorched the ground around them as the machines closed in. Lyra glanced back and shouted, "They're gaining." Arik tapped his wrist console, activating a stolen human stealth module. A shimmering field of distortion rippled around them, cloaking their heat signatures. The sentinel stopped abruptly, scanning the air with low mechanical clicks. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. One wrong sound, and they'd be dead. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed softly from above them. "Arik. Lyra." Up here, they looked up and froze. A figure in dark armor stood atop the broken tower above, holding a long rifle and wearing an unfamiliar visor. Arik raised his weapon instinctively. "Identify yourself." The figure leapt down gracefully, landing in front of them without a sound. Slowly, the visor retracted, revealing a face Lyra thought she would never see again. Kaelin. she whispered, her voice breaking. Her brother. Alive. For a moment, everything stopped. Lyra ran forward, tears welling in her eyes. But Kalen raised a hand, stopping her cold. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Arik's eyes narrowed. We were told you were dead. Kalen's expression hardened. I was, in a way. Lyra frowned, stepping closer. What do you mean? Kalen turned his gaze to the mothership above. They took me, Lyra, after the battle. The architects. Lyra's stomach dropped. They experimented on me. Kalen continued, his voice flat and emotionless. Changed me. Gave me access to their network. Arik's grip on his weapon tightened. So you work for them now? Kalen shook his head. I don't serve them, but I can hear them, their voices, their purpose. Lyra hesitated, fear crawling up her spine. What is their purpose? Kalen's eyes, once bright and warm, now glimmered faintly with golden light. They're building something called the Ascendant Core. And when it's complete, every species they created will be erased. Arik cursed under his breath. Then we destroy it. Kalen stared at him for a long moment. You can't destroy it. It isn't a weapon. Arik frowned. Then what is it? Kalen's voice dropped to a whisper. It's memory. The architects are uploading every thought, every instinct, every piece of knowledge from every species they made. And when the core is complete, they'll reboot us into something else. Lyra's claws trembled. Reboot us? Kalen nodded slowly. We're prototypes, Lyra. Incomplete designs. They've been using our wars to filter out the weak, to force us to evolve faster. When the core is ready, they'll erase everything we are, and replace us with what they always intended. Silence hung between them. Then Arik stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. Then we hit them before it's finished. Kalen's expression darkened. You don't understand. The Ascendant Core isn't here. It's inside their prime vessel, the Eidolon, hidden in a pocket dimension outside normal space. Arik's jaw clenched. Then you're going to take us there. Kalen hesitated, glancing between Arik and Lyra. Finally, he nodded. There's a way, but you're not going to like it. Before he could explain, a sudden tremor shook the ruins. The mothership above split open, revealing a massive swirling anomaly at its center, a gateway forming in real time. Kalen's voice dropped to a whisper. They're opening the path to the Eidolon. Arik locked eyes with Lyra. This is it. If we want answers, if we want a chance to stop them, we go now. Lyra's chest tightened. And if we fail? Arik chambered a fresh round in his rifle, his voice low and steady. Then there won't be anyone left to care. The three of them sprinted across the ruins as the mothership's tendrils descended like massive glowing roots, tearing through the ground. Kalen raised his rifle, firing precise bursts to disable nearby sentinels, while Arik dragged Lyra toward a massive conduit leading directly into the alien gateway. Energy crackled around them, distorting the air. The roar of power was deafening. Lyra grabbed Arik's arm, shouting over the chaos. We don't even know what's on the other side. Arik looked back at her, his expression fierce and unyielding. That's the point. As they leapt into the shimmering vortex, reality twisted violently. For an instant, Lyra felt everything. The weight of galaxies, the memory of entire civilizations, the cold, unblinking gaze of the architects themselves. And then, silence. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer in ruins. They stood inside a colossal chamber of living light, surrounded by vast networks of alien machinery. Endless streams of data flowed through crystal conduits like rivers of fire. At the center, suspended in a field of pure energy, was a massive crystalline sphere, pulsing like a heartbeat. Kalen's voice was barely a whisper. The Ascendant Core. Arik raised his rifle slowly, his voice low and sharp. Let's end this. The final stand. The chamber of the Ascendant Core burned with living light. Lyra stared at the massive crystalline sphere suspended in energy, its surface rippling like liquid fire. Rivers of data streamed into it through colossal alien conduits. Every heartbeat of the core echoed in her chest, deep and resonant as if the entire galaxy were breathing. Kalen stood beside her, silent, his golden-tinged eyes reflecting the glow. Arik gripped his rifle tightly, his jaw locked and his gaze fixed on the core. "This is it," Arik said quietly. "Their entire plan, their entire control. All of it flows through that thing." Lyra swallowed hard. "And if we destroy it?" Kalen's voice was low, almost mechanical. "If the core dies, every architect dies with it." Arik raised an eyebrow. "Good. Sounds like a plan." But Kalen didn't smile. "There's more," he said softly. "The core doesn't just hold their memory. It holds ours. Every thought, every evolution, every adaptation of every species they created is inside there. If we destroy it, we destroy ourselves too." A heavy silence fell over them. Lyra's chest tightened. "You mean, we'll die?" Kalen shook his head slowly. "Not just us, every human, every Lyrian, everyone they made." Arik exhaled, sharply, stepping forward. "Then we don't blow it up." Lyra glanced at him. "Then what do we do?" Arik looked back at the core, his voice steady but cold. "We steal it." Before Kalen could respond, the chamber trembled violently. From above, a massive Architect Sentinel Prime descended, its towering body fused with alien machinery, its glowing obsidian armor shifting like smoke. Its voice echoed like thunder, filling the chamber. "Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating termination protocol." Arik cursed under his breath. "Guess we're out of time." The Sentinel Prime lunged, its bladed limbs tearing through the ground. Arik rolled aside, firing plasma rounds into its chest. The bolts vanished into its shifting armor, absorbed like drops into water. Lyra leapt toward a console, hacking into the alien systems, her claws racing over the unfamiliar glyphs. "Hurry!" Arik shouted. "Any bright ideas would be great. Right about now." "I'm trying," Lyra snapped, pulling up structural schematics. Kalen stepped forward, his voice flat. "Don't waste your weapons, its armor learns, every hit makes it stronger." "Then what do you suggest?" Arik yelled, diving behind a crystalline pillar. Kalen turned, his golden eyes glowing faintly. "You stall it. I'll take control." Before Arik could argue, Kalen closed his eyes and knelt, placing both hands on the core's glowing surface. Lyra spun toward him. "Kalen, no! That thing is connected to—" His body convulsed violently as alien energy surged through him, merging, his neural patterns with the core. Through gritted teeth, Kalen gasped, "I can hear them." The architect's whispers filled his mind like an endless storm of voices, speaking in millions of overlapping languages. Prototype incomplete, species unsuitable, assimilation required. Kalen's scream tore through the chamber. Meanwhile, Arik grabbed a fallen alien spear, its surface pulsing with energy. He dodged another strike from the Sentinel Prime, jamming the spear into its central joint. For the first time, the machine staggered, letting out an unnatural, distorted shriek. Arik grinned grimly. "Guess you're not invincible after all." Lyra saw her chance and triggered a pulse from the console. A burst of electromagnetic energy cascaded through the chamber, disabling nearby drones. But the Sentinel Prime remained standing, its armor adapting instantly. "It's learning too fast," Lyra cried. Arik shouted back, "Then we need something it can't adapt to." Suddenly, Kalen's voice cut through the chaos, low and distorted. "I can control it." Lyra turned to him, her eyes wide. "Control what?" Kalen looked up, his glowing gaze locked onto the Sentinel Prime. "That." The massive machine froze mid-strike, its bladed limb hovering inches from Arik's head. Its red optics dimmed, and slowly, it lowered its weapons. Arik stared in disbelief. "Not bad, little brother-in-law." Kalen didn't respond. His breathing was shallow, his hands still pressed to the core. Lyra ran to his side, kneeling beside him. "Kalen, stop, it's too much, they're using you." Kalen shook his head weakly. "No, I'm using them." Suddenly, the chamber walls shifted, revealing dozens of other sentinels descending from the ceiling. Kalen's eyes widened in panic. "I can't control all of them." Arik cursed under his breath. "Then we move, now." Lyra pulled Kalen to his feet as Arik grabbed the data module from the console. But before they could escape, the core pulsed violently, filling the chamber with blinding light. From within the radiance, a colossal figure emerged. An architect, Prime, its true form revealed for the first time. It was nothing like the skeletal drones. This being was alive, its translucent body fused with streams of living energy, its many eyes burning like white fire. Its voice was soft and deep, resonating inside their very minds. "Children of our design, return to us." Lyra staggered back, her claws trembling. "You made us?" The Prime tilted its head, its voice calm yet commanding. "We created you, shaped your wars, molded your instincts, and now, you will transcend." Arik raised his weapon, his voice sharp and defiant. "Not today." The Prime regarded him silently. Defiance, a flaw, and yet potential. Before the Prime could strike, Kalen suddenly collapsed to his knees, screaming. The core was pulling him in, digitizing his neural patterns, absorbing his mind. Lyra grabbed him desperately. "Kalen, stay with me." His voice was faint, broken. "Lyra, listen to me. I can shut it down. But if I do, I won't come back." Tears welled in her eyes. "No, there has to be another way." Arik crouched beside them, gripping her shoulder. His voice was steady but heavy. "Lyra, it's his choice." Kalen smiled faintly, his gaze softening. "You were always the stronger one," he whispered. Then, with the last of his strength, he plunged his consciousness fully into the core. The entire chamber shook violently as the ascendant core screamed with energy. One by one, the sentinels collapsed. The Prime staggered, its glowing body flickering wildly. Impossible. Unapproved action. System destabilizing. Arik pulled Lyra toward the gateway, shouting over the chaos. "He's doing it! Move!" Behind them, the core erupted into a cascade of light, consuming everything in its wake. Just as they leapt into the collapsing portal, Lyra glanced back one last time. Kalen stood within the core, his body dissolving into pure light, his eyes calm and at peace. And then, silence. When Lyra opened her eyes, she and Arik were lying on a familiar world, back in their galaxy. Above them, the stars burned bright and unchanged. The architect fleets, gone. The warships, gone. It was over. Arik sat up slowly, wincing. "Did we win?" Lyra stared at the sky, her claws trembling. "We survived, but Kalen didn't." Arik placed a hand on her shoulder. "He saved everyone." But before relief could settle, Lyra's wrist console beeped softly. A single encrypted message appeared, one line of alien code translated into words. "Prototype 7 activated. Phase 2 begins." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "Arik, it's not over." Arik's jaw tightened, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Then we finish it."